Welcome to the Property Bible. This show was created for current property owners, people looking to purchase property, and for professionals in the industry. Hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the Property Bible. My name is Kim Ackerman. I'm a buyer's agent from Trelease Associates here in Sydney. Today we're going to be talking about a bit of a different topic. We've been going through a lot of fundamentals of the buying process, but I'm really excited because we're going to be going through some case studies today. Some real life case studies of things that our team at Trelease has been through with buyers, and we're going to be talking about how those case studies panned out. Now, I have a very special guest with me, Mr. Daniel Trelease himself. So welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Kim.
You're very welcome. Thanks for coming today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I know you're a very busy man with all these exchanges flying around at the moment. So,
Manic times.
Yes. So we have some real big stories to talk about. Some of our biggest stories.
Yeah.
Different people at Trelease, different buyers agents have carried out these great examples of, how buyers agents help people. So I think the first case study that we should touch on, we've called it twin apartments. And I know you know which one I'm talking about. So why don't you give the people a bit of an understanding of how that all panned out, what went down, and what was the outcome in that situation?
Yep. I'll use, I won't use suburbs, and I'll just use circa around prices and that sort of thing. But this was an extraordinary story because it was one of the first times where I was able to understand that, and I've always been very much against auctions. So for me to go through this experience, it was very helpful for me to understand and then obviously be able to relay this to the rest of the team of this is a scenario that just occurred.
Yeah.
And when we're looking at, and these were apartments, we called them the twin apartments because they were right next to each other. All right. The only difference was one had floorboards, one had carpet. 3 bedrooms, good views in one of the premier suburbs of eastern suburbs. So when we're looking at this, let's call it circa 1.5 million. It just sells naturally.
For the first apartment.
The first apartment.
Yeah.
And the neighbour wants to sell.
Yeah.
Let's work off the back of the sale of this one, the underbidders, et cetera, any other interested buyers.
Yeah.
So they had a guide of what this one sold for, expecting at least $100,000 more.
Okay.
Even though this was the one with carpet, not floorboards, so it didn't present as well.
Okay.
During the campaign, and this happens all of the time, which gives us so many opportunities. During the campaign, naturally, the vendor decided, well, I don't want offers. I'm going to reject these offers because I wanted to go to auction, and then they can all bid against each other. That's a great idea in theory, but all those buyers bought elsewhere during that campaign. Other buyers agents made offers of what they were looking for as well, not from our firm, but they were making offers of where they needed to be. Rejected.
Yeah.
Okay? Comes down to greed. It comes down to living in hope land. It comes down to believing that the grass is always greener on the other side. I often tell people the grass is never even laid on the other side. So look at what's in front of you and what's available. And we made a decision. Let's not go near this. Let's watch what happens. Let's play this out. We're a contract holder. We'll wait and see. The day of the auction, I got a call. Now, I already knew what was going on, but I knew this call was coming. So our clients were prepared. I signed the contract. Everything was done.
Yep.
Effectively, how this played out was I got a phone call. All the other buyers have bought. There's no point in carrying out the auction. Where are you? Well, I was $250,000 below where they needed to be and where the previous highest offer was.
So let me get this right. So the apartment next door previously sold quite recently for about 1.5. You guys were looking at number 2 next to it, and they were looking for a similar offer, if not higher, to sell that property, even though there were some elements in it that were maybe a bit less premium.
To all intents and purposes, they were identical.
Okay.
Same floor, everything.
Amazing. Yep. But you guys, instead of being at 1.5, were around that 1.25 mark at the time.
Yep.
Okay.
Correct.
And then what happened?
Well, it wasn't received very well, as you can imagine, from the vendor or the agent.
Yeah.
But they had already bought, so they didn't really have a choice.
Yeah.
This was the offer. This is the only offer your other buyers have bought. So you either pass it in and you start a whole new campaign. Maybe you engage a new sales agent and you start a new campaign.
Hope for the best.
Hope for the best.
Hope town.
Right? New buyers, all those sorts of things. Yes, literally. At the end of the day, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
And we bought for just below that level. right? So we're saving $250,000 and building $250,000 in equity as well.
Yeah.
Didn't sell at auction, $250,000 in equity overnight.
Okay. So that's like such a good example of how an agent has overcooked a campaign, how the vendor perhaps has been a little bit greedy, not accepted some great offers that were given to them. And you guys, who luckily enough was still around, had an offer nowhere near what they wanted.
Yeah. We didn't have the budget of what they wanted either.
Right.
So that was why this property was just on the watch list all the time.
Yeah. So you ended up getting that property over the line at 1.25.
Approximately
1.25.
Yeah.
The one next door had sold only very recently for 1.5, almost identical properties. That's $250,000 of instant equity, I guess you'd say.
Absolutely. 100%. This more than likely wasn't the sales agent's fault.
Yeah.
The vendor more than likely was instructing the sales agent, do not take this offer.
Yeah.
More than likely the sales agent would have been explaining you have what you wanted, well above what the reserve was going to be.
Yep.
You have what you wanted. But their instruction would have been take it to auction. And then literally in 2 days they lost all their buyers.
Yeah.
So who was left standing there? I was, not with the budget for
And they
what
had
they
to
needed.
sell.
Yeah.
They had to sell.
So there's part luck, there's part circumstance, there's part process from the sales agent side, and there's part understanding or lack thereof from the vendor side.
Yeah, for sure.
And there is a buyer's agent that is rather powerless throughout that process as well. That's why this search has to continue for other opportunities.
And we talk a lot about this in our sign-up meetings with people, that people always ask about the auction process. Do we go to auction? Is this part of the sale process? And one of the things you always say, which this circumstance specifically affected the knock-on effect of those conversations, is in special circumstances, we will go to auction.
Absolutely.
For example,
Absolutely.
this.
Exactly.
It's a pure example.
I'll always explain to clients, as will you, in any sign-up meeting, that we do not negate auctions and we do not negate on-market opportunities.
Yeah.
Sometimes off-markets are not the panacea that everyone believes them to be.
It's so true.
Right? I mean, how often do we negotiate with a sales agent to bring them into the transaction with an off-market we have found, to engage with that vendor, to represent them, and naturally we all work together to get the best result for both parties.
Yeah, absolutely.
Off markets, working direct with a vendor, it's not something a lot of people do. We've got a story coming up that we're going to talk about where that was a scenario.
Yes.
But it is very rare.
It is.
We far prefer to engage with a sales agent, represent the vendor, let's all work together. Otherwise, if you take this to market, pay for a campaign, go through that 6 weeks, 4 weeks, etc., then 6 weeks settlement, it's a long process for everyone. The sales agent, the lawyers, and of course the vendor. Bringing all of that forward and us being able to do a deal prior, well, we're a qualified buyer.
Yeah.
Our buyer has paid a retainer, engaged our service to find this style of property. So we're pretty qualified.
Yeah.
Or you can go out there into the marketplace and try and find a buyer you haven't even met yet.
Yeah.
So yes, you might be able to get $50,000 or $100,000 more. Might.
Yeah.
But also how much you're paying for a campaign as well.
Marketing fees.
Correct. There is so much to be said for selling off market. There's so much to be said to be selling pre-market. And there is so much to be said for selling on market.
Yeah, for sure.
It depends. If you've got the right buyer with the right offer and has engaged a buyer's agent especially, you should take that very, very seriously. If it's not for you, no worries. Thank them for their interest and move on with the campaign.
Yeah. And that's the thing about those vendor direct ones, that people think that that's the gold nugget of buying. Oh my God, what do you mean you found a property that's off market where there's no sales agent involved? But it's like you need the sales agent on the other side to drive the sell while we drive the buy at the same time. And having both of those professionals representing those people is going to create this really nice synergy when you're going through that process as well.
And naturally, it's more transparent for the vendor and for the buyer as well. There's always games in any sales industry, especially in real estate, especially in Australia. If you're looking at the United States, why do you think it works? Because most transactions will have someone on the buy side, a buyer's agent, someone on the sell side, a sales agent. That's why it's become totally the norm in the United States.
Yeah.
It is becoming that way now in the UK.
I think so.
Getting there.
Yeah.
Which is something we're exploring. And the United Kingdom is somewhere where with its current market and with Brexit and everything going on in that country, in that region, this is the time to enter a market like that. Okay, very similar to a lot of buyers agents kicked up and started up in COVID. Smart.
Yeah.
Okay, expand when others contract, I suppose.
Absolutely. All right, the next case study that I think we should talk about, we're calling it $1 million saving.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Yes.
this is one.
This is a good one.
For the books.
This is one for the books. So give us a bit of an explanation of what went on there.
Well, let's just set a disclaimer here.
Yes.
And, preface all of this. No buyer's agent can guarantee $1 million saving.
No.
All right?
No.
Literally, they can't. But some circumstances work in our favour. Things unroll. It's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yes.
And with this story specifically, again, very similar to the twin apartments.
Yep.
So, except this was a freestanding home in, I'm not allowed to say the suburb, am I?
In the eastern suburbs.
In the eastern suburbs.
Yeah.
Freestanding home, 5 bedrooms, back, had everything that one would want.
Yes.
In the millions of dollars.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how much money are we talking here with this property?
Again,
What
we
was
have to be
this worth?
careful with all of this sort of thing, but let's
Yes.
just say it's between 4 and 8 million.
Okay.
Okay.
Amazing.
Now, I'll just use random numbers. These are not the numbers. It's
Yep.
relevant.
Yep.
So during the campaign, we watched this property. We loved this property. We had multiple inspections. And this was on market, remember. This was
Yeah.
not off market, not pre-market.
Okay.
Full campaign. When we went through the property, my client's eyes lit up. It was perfect. We knew what we could do out the rear of the property, obviously, as well. They wanted to pull all these sorts of things. But it was just outside their budget by approximately $500,000.
Okay.
Okay, you can't just suddenly come up with $500,000. Many people can't.
No.
So let's talk around $6 million was the previous figure where it was offered. We bought for close to $5 million. Again, the day of the auction. Okay, it's so important to follow a process, follow every buyer, stay in touch with the sales agent, if the vendor if you can, the sales agent and vendor's lawyer if you can, and really understand who are the other buyers, where are the other offers, what is going on here, and what's the vendor's motivation. Has the vendor bought? Do they need to sell? What are they selling for? Downsizing, upsizing, etc. If we can understand as much intelligence around the vendor and even the sales agent as possible, are they a career agent, transactional agent? What kind of agent are they? Yeah. Junior, senior, principal, etc. Understand everyone's motivations. I prepared our client from the very beginning, we will not be buying this home. Okay? As the campaign went through, they rejected offer after offer after offer, including from us.
Okay.
Come auction day,
Did you know what they wanted at the beginning?
Yes, we knew exactly what they wanted.
Okay. And to give us a rough figure.
2 days before auction, there was let's just call it around the $6 million figure.
Yep.
These are not the numbers, as we said, 4 to 8 million.
Yep.
But right in the middle, let's just use 6 million.
Yep.
I bought for 5 million.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is for one reason only. They didn't accept offers during the campaign that were above their reserve and were above their expectation.
Yeah, wow.
Okay. Again, it comes down to greed. But if you were a vendor and you believe there is another buyer and you could achieve more than 6 million, would you? Of course you would. That's the normal way our brains work.
Yep.
But if you've been through property purchases and sales many times, you're going to realise perhaps that's a mistake I'll regret for a very long time.
Yep.
Bird in hand, great offer. Let's not be greedy for an extra $50,000, $100,000. Let's take this offer, and they should have.
Especially when you're talking about millions of dollars. If you're talking like anywhere from 4 to 8 million.
Yep.
50 grand is not a lot in the scheme of things. If you're talking sub 1 million properties, maybe 50 grand's a fair bit. But in the millions, it becomes...
And in this market, how quickly is $50,000 or $100,000 on a $7-8 million home going to be absorbed?
Correct.
Quickly.
Yeah.
All right. So yes, it's a schoolboy error, and it comes from an educational piece, I think, especially around buyers agents and the value they add. But for this property, what's extraordinary about this story is naturally that vendor hated me because I cost them $1 million. I didn't really. I still bought their home when no one else would have for $1 million less than what they were previously offered.
So what happened? So on auction day, you guys approached the agent and said, we know all those other buyers are gone.
Yes.
We have $5 million to offer you.
Yes.
Would you like to take it? We are not coming to auction.
Yes. Well, I gave them a contract 66W in check.
Okay.
Contract being reviewed. There are almost no changes to the contract apart from a shorter settlement period, which was conducive to the vendor as well.
Yeah.
So we didn't need to do a release of deposit or anything like that. It was just a very short settlement. They
Yep.
got their funds quickly.
Yep.
Now, that vendor wasn't very impressed with who we are and what we did and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Fast forward a couple of years.
So they accepted that offer.
They accepted it and we bought. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Fast forward a couple of years.
Yep.
Funnily enough, the vendor walked into the doors of Trelease Associates and said, could we speak to Daniel Trelease? I can't remember who it was. I think it was Jeremy, who answered the door. Anyway, I came out of my office. I saw who they were and I spoke with them. They were very polite, very cordial, very professional, almost grateful in a way. Strange, not what I was expecting.
Okay.
They basically walked in the door to engage us to buy a $5 million apartment.
That's great.
Again, these figures are all just for
Just for show.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's a great story to tell people.
It's an incredible story and it's a great story to tell people, but it's not a story you want to set up current clients or existing clients or future clients with.
No.
Because that's an expectation that is not readily achieved.
Correct.
That was a fantastic result.
But it's rare.
Yeah.
But these are some of the things that we are achieving, and some of these examples that we're going to touch on today are just some examples. But they're still happening,
yeah,
and we're still achieving them. But like you said, it's good for people not to have these high expectations because not every deal is going to be like that, unfortunately.
Not at all. Look, sometimes it's not about saving $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, especially when we're looking at, say, $700,000, $1 million, that sort of thing. Every dollar counts, of course, but it's more about, are you going to be the successful owner of this property, or are you going to miss out by $20,000 and you're still going to be looking in 3 months, in 3 months' time, you won't be able to afford a property like this for the same budget, especially in this market. Increased by 10 to 20% depending on region, just in the last month.
Okay, so the third case study we want to go through is actually one that I dealt with. This was a gentleman that originally came to you.
Yep. For our Queensland office.
Queensland office.
And then COVID hit and he pulled out. Yep.
COVID hit and they were wanting something that was positively geared. And obviously in some of Sydney markets, especially close to the city, that's quite difficult in some respects.
Oh. Extraordinarily so. Yep.
Extraordinarily so. And so these guys...
If it's a good asset.
Yes.
Very hard to get cash flow.
It's a good asset with good capital growth, having both the growth and the positive gearing of having that property pay for itself is quite difficult.
And it's probably important to note that this is residential, not commercial as well.
Total residential properties we're looking at here. So... This guy, he came to us with the intention of buying in Queensland. COVID hit, didn't work out. I came across a very particular opportunity with some contacts that I know, and put two and two together.
So it wasn't through a sales agent. It wasn't vendor direct, so it was through a third party.
So a third party, and the first thing that came to your mind is this gentleman would be great for this opportunity.
Yeah.
So I took him on as a client and I started that process of going down this track of looking at this opportunity. I was the only buyer on it at the time, the only ones looking at it. It was very special circumstances.
No one else knew or had access.
No one else knew about it. Not even sales agents in the area knew that it was a possible option to be sold. Their personal circumstances for the vendor with it, they'd gone through a divorce and they wanted to get it off their books, so to say. So I went through this process with my client. Seemed all very straightforward. There was something that wasn't right about it at the time because the price that we were chatting about was well below market value, hundreds of thousands of dollars below market value. And I knew that there was some strain there with the personal circumstances.
Yep.
However, we always want to do our due diligence and make sure that there's no skeletons in the closet. So started that process, got a strata report done because it was an apartment, got pest and building, contract review, all the normal stuff. Everything actually checked out at the time. And I said to my client, this is very unconventional, but there's something that doesn't feel right about the strata component, and I would like for us to get a second strata report done. Naturally, he probably thought that was a bit weird. It's also an additional cost, but he trusted me and my instincts. We got a second strata report done with someone that I'm very comfortable with and that I trust very much in the strata world. She undertook that strata report and found some issues associated with that place.
Yeah.
So that building was undergoing works, quite extensive works, and it had all been covered for in the strata, in the levies and so forth. There's already money in the kitty to pay for that. However, what we discovered was that investment property would have been vacant for about 10 weeks. That's 10 weeks of rent, and that's 10 weeks of buffering that client would have had to put aside to make sure that they could float the asset while the works were being carried out. So the tenants were going to have to be kicked out. All the works would have been done. We didn't know if it was going to take 3 weeks or 10 weeks or more weeks. And then we'd have to find someone, hopefully someone that we can match up with that rent. Now, this was a particular investment property. We're talking good capital growth in the Inner West region. We're talking 5.5% yield, which is just
net yield,
which is just unheard of with these types of assets in these regions close to the city. So good capital growth, good cash flow as well. And equity, instant equity, like hundreds of thousands of dollars in this property right away. So it took me about 2 months to go through that due diligence process.
Yeah, it was a long process.
It was a long process. It was a lot of detail that we had to collect from strata management. My strata lady went back 5 times, I think, during that process. She's amazing. And, you know, we managed to get it over the line. Now, if the amount of times that the agent on the other end wanted to walk away from this particular
well, he wasn't an agent, but...
He was a licensed real estate agent, but was leasing the property at the time. They had had enough by this stage and wanted to walk away.
Didn't he say to you, I'm out, this is too hard?
I'm out.
I don't care anymore.
Yeah, I don't care anymore. I don't want to be part of it. You can deal directly with the vendor. And I said, all right, I get it. It's taken a while, but let's just keep I always say to my clients, one foot in front of the other. Let's just keep moving forward, which we did. The client was obviously... didn't know what was going to happen at this stage, but a few days later, got it over the line, achieved, you know, I think it was $100,000 to $150,000 instant equity in that investment, 5.5% yield, fully positively geared property for in addition to their property portfolio, and some great capital growth for that type of region. Now, people hear that story and, like you said, it's not something that happens every day, but these are some of the things that we can achieve with the level of contacts, knowledge and patience we have through this process. And they do happen. These sorts of things do happen in our profession for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, we were looking through this and we were trying to use scenarios that people wouldn't be able to uncover, so to speak, due to our confidentiality. And looking at these, I mean, this is touching the surface. Every buyer's agency, every buyer's agent, every sales agent would have similar stories. But at the end of the day, what we're noticing now is the level of detail that we're going to as a firm. I mean, this client, for example, naturally said afterwards he's never experienced such detail and such due diligence in his life. And he's quite a serious investor with a rather large portfolio that you're now helping him consolidate and restructure. So I think it's an incredible story, especially seeing as it is something where the due diligence component was where we were able to understand, okay, we need to do further due diligence here, not just buy it because it's an easy buy, let's get it done, we get paid, the client's happy, and then they find out all of this later on. And it's about due care for the client, which a lot of people in this industry, it's about getting the deal done, not what's actually right for your client. And that's short-sighted.
I know.
He and his wife are going to come back to you and come back to the company year after year after year now. that's what referral business is about, and
Yeah,
that's
for
what good service is about as well.
For sure. So, I mean, we could talk about case studies all day. Unfortunately,
Yep.
some of the really juicy ones we cannot talk about because they involve very specific and confidential situations, agents, owners, vendors, buyers, the whole shebang.
Yep.
But I think those three are three great examples of some of the things that we do on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
And some of the ways that we help people.
Yep.
So the difference with this topic is there's not going to be any tips, guys, because your only tip right now is to hire a buyer's agent at this point. But to take away from this, there's so much that goes into the buyer's agent process. A lot of people say to me, don't you just buy property? Like, why can't people do that themselves? There's so much politics, drama, stuff that goes on behind the scenes that sometimes we don't even tell the clients about because it's very stressful. Would you say?
Absolutely. My God. 90% of the hard work is happening in the background.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not always things that we chat to the client about because we want to protect them through this situation and through the things that are actually going on in the background.
It's a stressful enough process for anyone buying property and selling property.
Sure.
If we can shelter them from 90% of what's going on, the better.
Exactly. The outcome is what's important here. And if we can get them a great outcome and exceed their expectations with, their wishes at the beginning that they came to us with, that's what matters at the end of the day. So thank you for your time, Daniel.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Kim.
I know you have a lot of meetings to attend today.
All good.
So I've loved having you here. And I hope this has been interesting for people to listen to these case studies of the things that go on in our office alone.
I know. No, lots of fun. Let's do it again soon.
For sure. So tune in a couple of weeks' time for another episode of the Property Bible.